Now, the last closed microphone techniques I want to analyze and let you hear, it's called MS and stands for mid and side. This is a phenomenal microphone techniques, which as well helps a lot to describe primarily the room in which you're recording your instrument. I generally use these techniques when I don't have an incredibly big room, as this techniques helps to enhance a little bit more the sides of the room. As a matter of fact, it's called mid and side because we have two microphones. One microphone that needs to be in figure 8 pattern, which in this case we use an AKG 414 in figure 8, but you could use a ribbon microphone or any other microphone, especially large diaphragm microphones that can be set to figure 8 polar pattern, which is, if this is the polar pattern, as you can see, the drums is sitting perfectly at the null point of the figure 8. Because what we want to do with this two plates of our microphones, in this case we're talking about plates because we're using a condenser microphone, is picking up the exact reflections that come from the adjacent wall, excluding completely the instrument. So over here, the sides are picking up the sides of the kit. We don't care about the center. That's why we use another microphone in conjunction, our mid microphone, because this mid microphone is generally a small diaphragm condenser microphone. We use a Schweppes in cardioid pattern. This mid microphone in this case is responsible of giving us a greater information of whatever happens in front of this microphone techniques. Now, what is really interesting about this techniques is that first of all, has great mono compatibility. So once we're going to be mono up or narrowing down or checking if there is any phase cancellation, this technique has great mono compatibility. Of course, once we sum up the left and right of the sides, we're going to be canceling each other out, but that's why we have our mono microphone, which is still capable of letting us hear what this microphone or what the kit would sound like at that distance. Another great thing is that this technique plays a little bit more with binaural cue, so the stereo spread is insanely wide when we listen to it. As a matter of fact, again, I invite you to listen to all this demonstration with a good pair of headphones or with a good pair of speakers, because only with those you are going to be able to truly enjoy and understand what we're talking about. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you hear what we did with the MS. Now, before I start, let me just describe one thing. Mid and side uses two microphones. Now, with one microphone, the mid, where we use the Schweppes, that's not a problem. That's one microphone, one capsule. In cardioid pattern, we're picking up whatever feeds the microphone or however we position the microphone, and the job is done. With the side portion of this microphone techniques, we need to decode and extrapolate the back plate, which is fairly easy. As you can see over here, I have two tracks, 18 and 19. One says side, and the other one said side, but with the phase inverter. So what I did, and you can do it easily in any DAW, I did it in Pro Tools because that's what we used to record it, was to duplicate literally the side track. And as a matter of fact, let me do this. Let me just letting you hear the side track. So the side track sounded like this. Right now is that in the center. So I duplicated the track, and by duplicating it, what we should have is approximately 6 decibel of increased loudness, because we're simply duplicating the exact same track. Which in fact we have. Now the goal here is to decode the side. In other words, to extrapolate the back plate or whatever the back plate is picking up. So right now the front plate is here, the gold face of these AKG. Now we need to figure out how to pick up this sound, because you know, when we're talking about mid and side, especially the side, we're using one microphone. We're using still our trusty AKG 414, so it's one microphone, one input. Though we're using both plates to record at the same time. So what I did was simply to duplicate the track and flip the face. You could do it with an Audio Suite plugin. You could go into Avid and find, it's called Invert. There we go. You can actually render the file flip in the face, or I simply insert another plugin. I insert a trim plugin, and what I did with the trim plugin is nonetheless to invert the phase over here. So by default the phase is off. I click the phase inverter, and when these two microphones are dead in the center, they're gonna cancel each other out at 180 degrees. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna let you hear both microphones together. As soon as I enable the trim plugin with the polarity phase checked in, we're not gonna be able to hear anything. They cancel each other out because they are exactly 180 degrees out of phase one with another. But the trick of this technique is working with this at our advantage. As a matter of fact, what you want to do is to pan one side completely hard left and the other side completely hard right, which in this case, we're not gonna run into any phase problems or phase cancellation problems. Of course, once we're gonna be mono up or sum into mono, the sides, they're gonna be, of course, canceling each other out. But the goal here is kind of like to hyper accentuate the stereo spread. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna let you hear this right now, and by default, you should have a little bit of you should be a little bit destabilized. It's a very interesting and extremely weird feeling what I'm about to play right now, especially if you play it through a set of speakers. So give it a listen only on what these two capsules are picking up. Very interesting, a very weird stereo panorama, but extremely interesting, because what I'm gonna do right now, I will add my mid, and what my mid track, what the Schweppes will do, is kind of like bringing me a little bit more into a context where I have a greater understanding of what happens right in front of me, and yet a very spread out stereo panorama. So I'm gonna let you hear only these three microphones. I'm gonna let you hear only the mid. And I'm gonna unmute the sides while we listen to the mid. You hear how all of a sudden the overall kit like gains a maximum spread out, because what we're actually recording is only the side of the plate. So the kit is facing the microphone, but the microphone is picking up only the side reflection of it. Now, another word needs to be spent. Let me close this for a second. Has what I generally do with mid-side microphones is leaving the mid 3 dB louder than the sides. In other words, I lower the sides of approximately 3 dB compared to the mid. And then what I also do is to group them together. I have already done my homework. So no matter what I do in terms of changing the level of my room microphones, they're always going to be respecting a relative distance of 3 decibel between the sides and the center. So no matter what I do, I know that even if my fader is a -20, they're going to be 3 dB lower than that, always a -23. So no matter what I do with my mid, the sides will toggle along. I'm gonna bring this back at 0. That's where we want it. All right. And what I'll do right now is the same thing we did so far, playing a little bit with closed microphone versus mid-side to see how much these techniques truly add to the overall kit. I'm gonna bring back Jake. I'm gonna start soloing kick, snare. Actually, let me do this. So I'm gonna solo kick, snare, toms, why not, overhead, and then my mid and side. All right, so right now we're listening to kick in, snare top, rack tom, and floor tom without the mid side. I'm going to let you hear the same thing, but unmute all of a sudden the mid-side technique. You hear how explosive the whole room started to sound all of a sudden? I'm going to move towards another section of our drums. I'm also going to start balancing the amount of room versus the close microphones, and that's why grouping these three faders together allow me to create a perfect blend, because again, the sides will always gonna maintaining a relative 3 decibel distance from the mid, so they're always going to be 3 decibel lower. I'm going to lower everything and start blending the room mid side in with the close microphones. I'm going to move also to the beginning of my session, and let's go. The room just came alive. Right now I'm hearing a very elegant, if I can say that, elegant and a very polished room tone. So I have a very good definition of my closed microphones, and as well I'm starting to gain this extra depth, which is still very focused, monocentric, given the mid, but yet on the sides I perceive all this reflections feeding the microphone. That's why I love this technique so much. What I'll do right now is muting it and unmuting it while we listen to the performance. I'm going to start right now to mute and unmute the overheads versus the rooms, because I want you to truly to focus on how much the size of a drum kit increase the before exponentially between the stereo spread as soon as I unmute the overheads, and then after I want you to focus on the third dimension that gets created by the mid and side or this close room microphone techniques. So I'm gonna let you hear before the overall kit, and then I'm gonna do the exact same thing but towards a different part, perhaps the section where he's doing a tom fill. So you hear the difference? On one side we have the overheads that give us an imprint to the drum kit, a very nice stereo blend. And then we got the MS, which in this case is adding a lot of space and width to the overall sound. I'm going to move towards the tom fill over here to see what these two techniques are doing. So again, I'm gonna let you hear only the kick, snare, tom, and floor tom, and then I will unmute the mid and side. So again, the tom as the kick drum, they have a very low fundamental, especially the floor tom. So positioning the microphone at a certain distance, what we're allowing the sounds to do is to develop its wavelength. And in this case, our room tone, it's picked up by this microphone. And right now we are capable to record fully the depth of the specific instrument. What I'll do right now is to play a little bit with all the rooms we got, or better, with all the closed rooms we got. So still from the same section, I will start by unmuting the mono room. Then I will mute it back, open the bloom lane, mute it back, and open the mid and side. Focused again on the size of the kit. Again, mid side. Bloom lane. Mono room. Combination. So right now we'll play mono room plus bloom lane, mute it, and unmute the mid side. So it's 3 microphones versus 3 microphones, or 2.5. So I'm gonna start by only direct sounds, then mono and bloom lane, and while we play it, I will mute this and open the mid side. Mid side. Now I will engage and disengage mid-side and bloom lane and mono while we listen to it. We'll start with mid-side, and then we'll progress through the bloom lane and mono. I'm gonna do the exact same thing, but right now opening the overhead. So we're listening to left and right Royer 122 with mono and bloom lane. Mid side. From a different section, I'm gonna start with mid side and then switch to bloom lane. So the two techniques are completely different. I mean, they do pick up the exact same instrument, the exact same space, the exact same accents that the drummer is doing, but they do work in different ways. So I would use them for two different style of productions. Maybe in a little bit more aggressive style like rock, heavy metal, I will kind of work a little bit more, or punk rock, I will kind of work a little bit more with the mono room in conjunction with Bloom Lane, and perhaps something a little bit less heavy, I would totally work with a mid-side. Of course, those are, you know, suggestions, but the key here is truly listen how these techniques work in conjunction with the song that we're trying to produce. Before we move on to the far back room, I want to again do an A and B between Bloom Lane and mono plus the mid side. So I will be engaging and disengaging, muting and unmuting these two techniques along while we listen to it. So pay a lot of attention on the different sounds that these techniques create. I'm going to move toward another section, doing the exact same thing, just A and B, the two different microphone techniques. Towards another section again. So again, as I stated before, the two techniques are definitely different, and they do work very well once we start adding in the definition of the closed microphones plus overheads microphones. And the only way to truly understand how they work is to listen to them in conjunction with what you're going to be recording. I am going to start opening up all my drum kit that we got so far. So I'm going to be muting the Glyn Jones for now, and as well the XY. And I'm gonna let you hear only the overall drum kit with the mono room plus the Bloom Lane, and then just the overall drum kit with only the mid side. Let's see which one we like the most. Let's start with Bloom Lane. I'm gonna move towards the beginning. I'm gonna move toward another section. Now we're gonna be listening to mid side, and then I will switch where we'll listen to Bloom Lane and mono room. I'm gonna end it up with the view from drummer perspective. Let's start with mid side. So again, my taste, especially for what we're going to be recording after, it's pointing a little bit more towards the combination of the U47 mono room plus Bloom Lane. Again, this is just my personal taste. You might like the complete opposite of what I like, But this is the great thing about this job. It's all about taste. It's all about how we hear things. So without any further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and let you hear how the far back rooms sounds.